We have waited to say these two words for about a year. It's March. Welcome back to another edition of Penn State Sports Night. I'm Jacob Cheris alongside Carlos Garcia and Brendan Conroy. March Madness tips off this Thursday with the play-in games, and then the Field of 64 will begin Friday. So first I want to know, what are your initial reactions to the rankings that were revealed on Sunday? Carlos, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I thought the committee did pretty well. I mean, it's been over a year since we had March Madness, so just great to be back and watching again. But I think there were a couple of issues that I saw with the rankings. The first one that I have is Louisville. You know, they went 19 days without playing a single game at one point in the season, and they got left off the bracket because of that. You know, they had a COVID pause, but it wasn't their fault. It was due to other issues with scheduling and other teams. So I think it really wasn't fair for them to be left out when they couldn't really control the COVID issues that happened. Like I said, 19 days. It's kind of hard to not even play a game and then to recuperate and get back on the court. Obviously, it really hurt them, but the upside to that is that they're one of the replacement teams for the tournament. So if an ACC team opts out, they're able to get selected to put into the tournament. But I don't think any team will really opt out unless there's an issue with COVID. So that's my first issue. And then my second problem was, you know, it's a shocker to me, and no pun intended, but Wichita State, the Shockers, they only played 19 games in the season, and they got an 11 seed. And I just don't like the bid. I don't see why you only play 19 games. One of the teams to play the least amount of games in the season, and they get a bid into the tournament, while there's other teams, like I said, going back to Louisville, who deserved a shot. So I think Wichita State and Louisville, those are two teams that really kind of didn't sit well with me in terms of the rankings. But I think that the committee did pretty well, and the brackets, it's solid.
Yeah, and it is March. It's going to get crazy. As we just found out, the Duke Blue Devils and the Kentucky Wildcats will not be making an appearance this year. That is the first time since 1976 that both Coach K and Coach John Calipari have not made an appearance in March Madness. So it really begs the question, where did they go wrong? We see these teams every year. They're solid. Most of the time, they're one seeds. They fight against each other. They're both great teams. However, this year, since they couldn't build their team up to the potential that they wanted it to be, they're going to have to relook their game plan, be far more precise in recruiting next year so that they can fill out in those key aspects that they need in order to hopefully save themselves a spot in next year's tournament 365 days from now.
Which first-round matchups should we be most excited for, and what potential upsets should we be on the lookout for?
One game that I want to talk about is Colgate versus Arkansas. Colgate, the 14 seed, Arkansas, the 3 seed. Both great teams. However, although you may assume Arkansas, being the 3 seed, has an easy victory, that is not the case because Colgate is second in scoring, only behind the Zags, who are undefeated, 26-0 this season. But with the points per game, the Colgate can get the ball into the basket. They know how to shoot the ball. They have all the parts. They have great D. They average 86.4 points a game to Arkansas's 82.4. So with that advantage, they're hungry. They're ready. Being the underdog team, they're going to come in strong. They're going to prepare more than well enough for this game. So it's going to be interesting to see. If you put Colgate on your brackets, you might be surprised and get a win there with the team.
Yeah, well, a game I'm looking at in the first round is we got a little playing game first. We got 11 seed Michigan State and UCLA fighting for that 11 seed. But I think Michigan State's going to pull out that victory, and then they're going to match up against number 6 seeded BYU. And, you know, you can never go wrong. I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I would be putting all my money on Tom Izzo's Michigan State Spartans. You can never go wrong with betting against MSU in March. And Tom Izzo's a guy who, you know, this season they flew under the radar. You see that they're fighting for that one of the last spots in the tournament. But I think that Tom Izzo is always a guy who can get his team to Elite Eights, Finals Four. We saw it a couple years ago when they played Duke and they beat them, when Duke had Zion, RJ Barrett, and Cam Reddish and that star-studded roster. So I think definitely the Michigan State Spartans are a team that's flying under the radar, and they can definitely go far. You know, they had a couple quality wins during the season. They beat Duke in the beginning of the season when they were ranked 6th, and they have wins against Rutgers, Illinois, Ohio State, and they even beat Michigan twice at the end of the season. So I think definitely the Michigan State Spartans and Tom Izzo squad, like it says right here, March Izzo, you can never go wrong with betting against them. So this is a huge game to be watching out for in the first round.
Now, the moment we've all been waiting for, it's time to give our picks for the Final Four. Who do you guys got?
Now, we're bound to see some upsets, but these 4 teams are phenomenal. They have stars. They are strong. They know what they're doing. As you can see, Gonzaga, they're undefeated. They have the opportunity to be the first undefeated team going through a tournament since 1976. That's big for them. They have the confidence. They have Jalen Suggs. They are just a phenomenal team. They haven't lost a game this year. That's just going to put them in such a good position as we enter the tournament. Up here, Ohio State, they did just lose in overtime to Illinois in the Big Ten tournament. However, they're still hungry. It's March. One loss isn't going to define the whole tournament, especially when you're a 2 seed, a seed that high. Their first couple games should be pretty easy for them to get the victory in that. I expect to see them in the Final Four just because of how much dedication they put into their game, how close they were to beating Illinois in that Big Ten championship. Moving on to Illinois now, they did win the championship, obviously over Ohio State in overtime. They are like a strong team. They are insane. They know what they're doing as well, just like these other teams. They're going to come out strong. They're going to come out shooting. They're going to come out scoring. And making it to the Final Four doesn't seem like too much of a challenge for them. Alabama, they just won the SEC. They have defense. They have the coach. They're a 2 seed, so obviously they're not an underdog. But winning the SEC doesn't necessarily give them a spot to the Final Four, but I do think that they have what it takes to get themselves to that spot. But as the tournament goes on, you never know who we're going to see here. But I definitely feel like you'll be seeing these 4 teams in the Final Four as the tournament proceeds.
Yeah, those are definitely some great points, and I love the Final Four, but I'm going to have to switch it up a little bit here. I'm not a guy who likes to pick a lot of 1 seeds, but I think this is a year that the 1 seeds, they're powerhouses, they're big teams, so they're going to go all out. Like you were talking about, number 1 Gonzaga, the number 1 ranked team in the nation, you know. They're outscoring everybody. They're just steamrolling opponents. I think with the firepower of Jalen Suggs leading this squad, I don't see anyone stopping them. They're the favorites to win the championship, and obviously right so, because this team, like I said, steamrolling opponents, they're one of the best teams in the nation. I got over here number 1 Michigan, the number 1 seed. You know, they lost in the Big Ten tournament, you know, and it was an upset. Not an upset. It was tragic that they lost to Ohio State. But I think this team's hungry. I love what Juwan Howard's doing with the program, and he's bringing them back up to the top. They're ranked number 3 or number 2 at the highest point in the season. So I think this team's hungry, and they're coming for blood. Over there, I got Baylor, you know, another 1 seed that I really like. They were undefeated, and then they lost the last 2 games. They're 22-2 now, outscoring opponents by around 15 points. And there's another team that lost in the conference tournament. They lost to OK State, who I'm going to get to in a little bit. But I'm not worried. This is a team that I'm not really worried too much about the conference tournaments. Yeah, we saw teams like Alabama, who won the SEC, and they got that 2nd overall bid. But I'm not really a huge fan about the conference tournaments. I think when it matters most is right here in the Final Four and in the actual tournament. And lastly, Oklahoma State. I mean, it's a shocker. It's a 4 seed, and people don't really think that they're going to make it out, but I'm riding that Cade Cunningham wave, the consensus number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft, or soon to be. I like what Cade Cunningham's doing. I like what the program's doing. And, you know, they made it to the Big 12 championship game against Texas. They beat a team like Baylor. So I think that what they're doing, Oklahoma State, I love it. Cade Cunningham, he's going to be leading that team all the way to Final Four in Indianapolis.
Even though this won't be a traditional March Madness with packed stadiums, the action will still be very exciting. And that's going to do it for this edition of Penn State Sports Night. For Carlos Garcia and Brendan Conroy, I'm Jacob Cheris, and let the madness begin.
Thank you for watching this edition of Penn State Sports Night. If you're a fan of our content, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more clips. Also, follow us on Twitter at PSSN TV and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with all the action. For all my colleagues, we are Penn State Sports Night.